We will bring you the details of these stories and more in a moment. Many thanks indeed for joining us. And first in the news this afternoon is a report that the federal government has informed traditional rulers nationwide to steer clear of mining sites, saying they belong to the landowners. Minister of Mines and Steel Development Olamilekan Adegbite gave the warning in Ibadan during the inauguration of the International Gemstone Market under the Economic Sustainability Plan of the federal government. Adegbite explained that the Mineral and Mining Act of 2007 was in favor of the rightful owner of the proposed site for mining activities and not traditional rulers. The minister added that the newly opened gemstone market will create and generate sustainable competitive advantages in key areas such as development of downstream gemstone and gold mining industries, increasing the level of employment in all business activities related to the gemstone mining cluster, among others. Meanwhile, the federal government has refunded 859.7 billion naira to various state governments as reimbursement for out-of-pocket expenditures incurred in constructing federal roads over 8 years. This was disclosed in a fact sheet highlighting the achievement of the Buhari administration shared by the presidency. And following reports that state governments inflate the cost of repair works carried out on federal roads, the Minister of Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, directed states to desist from such interventions as the federal government would not offset such expenses. Meanwhile, the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, had said that henceforth, if any state takes on federal road projects without the permission and supervision of the federal government, money spent on the project will not be refunded. In the meantime, the federal government has said that the cost of electricity consumption in Nigeria is among the cheapest and most defaulted by consumers in the world. This came as the chairman of the Senate Committee on Power, Gabriel Suswam, said electricity distribution companies had listed military formations, educational institutions, and state governments among the defaulters of power bills. Meanwhile, the Minister of State for Power, Abubakar Aliyu, who appeared before the Senate Committee on Power alongside the heads of various agencies in the power sector in Abuja, said electricity was highly subsidized in the country by the federal government, making it the cheapest across the globe. Away from that, Nigeria's former Deputy Senate President Ekweremadu, his wife and doctor will be sentenced in Britain today for allegedly plotting to harvest a man's kidney for his sick daughter. In the first United Kingdom case of its kind, 60-year-old Ekweremadu was found guilty in March at the London's Old Bailey Criminal Court of conspiring to traffic the young street trader into Britain for his body parts. Also convicted were Ekweremadu's wife, Beatrice, who is 56, and Dr. Obinna Beta, 50, who has acted as a middleman in the plot. Reports say that in Britain, from the Green Chambers, the House of Representatives has approved the Ways and Means advances obtained by the federal government from the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, to the tune of 23.7 trillion naira. The approval by the House came after the Senate granted the presidential request, which reportedly generated outcry, especially from the private sector. The Joint House Committee on Finance, Banking and Currency, Aid and Loans and Debt Management, in plenary, recommended that the House approve the requested additional 1 trillion naira Ways and Means advances for the implementation of the 2022 Supplementary Appropriation Act as passed by the National Assembly and approved the securitization of the total outstanding Ways and Means, which is under the following terms: 23.7 trillion naira tenor, 40 years, moratorium on principal repayment, 3 years, as well as pricing and interest rate 9% per annum. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives Committee on Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, has threatened to move against the new management of the regional intervention body should it misuse or abuse public resources. The chairman of the House Committee on NDDC, Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, issued the warning in Abuja as the management of the commission defended its 2021, 2022, and 2023 budgetary proposals before the lawmakers. The Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, NDDC, Samuel Ogbuku, had appeared before the committee to defend the budgetary estimate of the 3 years totaling 2.9 trillion naira. Tunji-Ojo noted that it was the responsibility of the committee to scrutinize every detail of the proposals to ensure that they are making the best decisions for the organization, the people of the Niger Delta region, and its stakeholders. On judicial matters now, the National Industrial Court sitting in Owerri has issued an interim order restraining the Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC) and the Trade Union Congress (TUC) or any of its agents or affiliates from embarking on any strike in Imo State, pending the hearing and determination of the motion on notice for interlocutory injunction filed in the suit. An interim injunction signed by Justice Nelson Ogwanya, the court also restrained the NLC and the TUC or any of its affiliates from stopping, hindering, disrupting, or interfering with the provision of services and other works by their members in the civil and public service in Imo, pending the hearing. The judge, however, set the return date for the court proceedings and hearing of the matter till May 11, 2023. Meanwhile, the Federal High Court in Abuja has adjourned the trial of a former registrar of the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board (JAMB), Dibu Ojerinde, to June 20. Justice Obura Egwatu had joined the case to enable the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission (ICPC) to put its house in order, following an oral application for an adjournment by ICPC counsel Ebenezer Shogunle. Recall that at the resumed hearing, Ojerinde's lawyer, Eteya Ogana, told the court that a motion had been filed challenging the rearrest of the former JAMB boss and seeks the court order for his release. On the Sudan crisis, the second batch of Nigerians fleeing the insurrection in Sudan are expected to arrive Nigeria today from Egypt. The chairman, Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabirerewa, made this known to newsmen while noting that Egypt's officials had insisted that the airplanes sent from Nigeria must be able to take the number of Nigerians available, otherwise they will not be allowed to evacuate anyone. Meanwhile, the Nigerian ambassador to Egypt, Nura Rimi, said the 95 Nigerian students from Borno State have been moved from Wadi Halfa to the Egyptian side of the border. Recall that the first batch of the evacuees arrived Nigeria on Wednesday night after spending 7 days at the Arkin border of Khartoum in Sudan. On security matters, the military has warned against plans to sabotage the handover of power to President-elect Bola Tinubu on May 29. The High Command said the armed forces were on standby and would ensure a smooth transition process scheduled to take place in 23 days. Director of Defense Media Operations, Musa Dan Madami, met the warning as a former military head of state, Yakubu Gowon, advised candidates challenging the outcomes of the last election to accept the court's verdict. In a separate development, the Federal Road Safety Corps (FRSC) says it will continue to apprehend motorists with faded vehicle number plates as they are security risks to the public. The Corps Public Education Officer, Bisi Kazim, stated this in an interview with newsmen in Abuja. Kazim said driving a vehicle with faded number plates on the roads is a huge security risk for other road users because miscreants, kidnappers, terrorists, and other enemies of the state can leverage that gap to commit heinous crimes as their identity is masked. And back here in the state, as part of activities to mark the end of his 8 years tenure in office, the Ekweremadu State Governor, Ekweremadu, has continued to inaugurate more projects. Governor Emmanuel yesterday led his Bauchi State counterpart, Senator Bala Mohammed, to inaugurate the Anwar Bagishet Road in fulfillment of his promise to the people to focus his completion agenda on rural development. Our correspondent completes the report.
In the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful.
Bauchi State Governor Senator Bala Mohammed has inaugurated the 17.95 kilometers Anwar Mbak-Ished Road with spurs and 1.65 kilometers outfall drain in Uyo and Uran local government areas. Speaking during the event, Mohammed, who described Governor Emmanuel as a role model of good governance in Nigeria, again commended his infrastructural strides in Akwa Ibom, stressing that it was worthy of emulation.
I don't want to bore you with a long protocol. I am very, very exhilarated, Mr. Governor, to be here, because I can see the connection, the attachment to excellence. I can see that the people of this community are positively touched by your Midas touch, because you have delivered what they craved for many years. Governor Udom Emmanuel, I am not flattering him, because he has nothing to give me other than friendship, which he has already given me. But he is one of the best Nigerians we have ever produced. Yes. You are still coming back. I have been watching you with keen interest. I believe you are one of those who should be a role model in administration and governance.
Earlier in his address, Akwa Ibom State Governor Udom Emmanuel stressed that construction of road infrastructures in the state, especially in rural communities, was an appreciation of the people's support to his administration in the last 8 years. According to him, provision of rural roads will help to enhance the rural economy of the state. On the second phase of the road project, Governor Emmanuel assured that funds will be made available for the construction before he leaves office.
I made a commitment that during this second tenure, we will turn our eyes and look at the rural development. And we'll look at the economies of contribution to our GDP by these rural dwellers. And I want to also assure them that we'll try and make money available before we leave for that second phase, so that we won't leave burden for the incoming governor.
In their goodwill messages, Governor-elect of Akwa Ibom, Pastor Moino, Speaker of the State House of Assembly, Nyeken Basi, and his Uyo counterpart, Anete Ka, amongst others, all commended Governor Emmanuel for the quality of the road, noting that the road will ameliorate the sufferings of the people over the years. Reports say the road links several communities in Uyo and Uran local government areas, and also leads to the popular shared fish market in Uran. In Uyo, Jane Uwa, Spectrum Television News.
Let's go to Africa now, where U.S. President Joe Biden has issued an executive order authorizing sanctions against Sudan, saying the fighting must end. Biden called the violence a tragedy and a betrayal of the Sudanese people. He added that the violence in Sudan was an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of the United States. Still in Africa, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says his country is ready to assist Mozambique in the fight against terrorism. Reports say Japanese Prime Minister is visiting Mozambique as part of a 6-day tour which took him to 3 other African countries, Ghana, Kenya, and Egypt. He said Japan was interested in financing the fight against terrorism in northern Cabo Delgado province, which would allow Japanese companies that are part of the consortiums exploiting natural gas in the Rovuma Basin to operate in a safe environment. Kishida and Mozambican President Filipe Nyusi will be holding a talk on the need for Japanese private investment in structural areas of the economy, with a view to concrete results in bilateral cooperation. Nyusi urged the Japanese to explore investment opportunities in transport, agriculture, industry, and tourism. On the foreign scene, leader of Russia's Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, has threatened to withdraw his troops from Ukrainian city of Bakhmut by Wednesday in a row over ammunition supplies. According to him, Russia has been trying to capture the city for months despite its questionable strategic value. Reports say Prigozhin pinned his decision squarely on the defense ministry. Still on the foreign scene, China's foreign minister, Qin Gang, has informed his Russian counterpart that Beijing would maintain communication and coordination with Moscow as efforts is made to reach a political settlement to the Ukraine conflict. Gang said China is willing to maintain communication and coordination with Russia to make tangible political contributions to the political settlement of the crisis. According to reports, Beijing has so far refused to condemn Russia's invasion of Ukraine or call for a withdrawal of its troops, instead urging restraint by all parties and accusing NATO of fueling the conflicts. Still to come in the news. Napoli draws Udinese to win first Serie A title in 33 years. To stay with us. Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us. And now on the business news, the Nigerian Exchange Group has said that the last general elections and the narrow redesign policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria had impacted on its top-line revenue negatively. It said this resulted in a 20.5% decline to 1.33 billion naira in the first quarter of 2023 from first quarter 2022 revenue of 1.67 billion naira. This was disclosed in its unaudited results for the first quarter, which ended on March 31, 2023. According to the group, transaction fees, which accounted for 51.5% of revenue, dropped by 30.6% to 685.9 million naira due to reduced business activities. Still on business, the host communities of the Nigeria producing oil and gas has said it is targeting a $5 billion fund in partnership with the private sector to kickstart investment drive and development in the oil-producing states in the country. The Executive National Chairman of the body, Dr. Mike Emu, spoke during its National Executive Committee meeting in Warri. According to Emu, whilst the 2-3 financial allocations could come from the government for the development of the oil and gas producing state, it was high time strategic steps were taken to involve the private sector. He explained that such a step was necessary not only for managing such funds more efficiently, but also for utilizing financial resources from the private sector to augment partnerships that worked for the good of all parties. Emu eulogized President Muhammadu Buhari for his administration's gesture towards the oil and gas producing state by signing the Petroleum Industry Bill into law, now known as the Petroleum Industry Act. According to him, the payment of the 13% derivation fund was done in appreciation of the challenges faced by the locals in the oil and gas communities. As talk health now, the World Health Organization WHO says the number of weekly reported deaths from COVID-19 is declining following the spike in China after the country lifted restrictions. WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus, who stated this at the 15th meeting of the Emergency Committee on the COVID-19 pandemic, said it was very pleasing to see that the downward trend had continued. According to him, the sustained trend has allowed life to return to normal in most countries and has increased the capacity of health systems to cope with potential resurgences and the burden of post-COVID-19 condition. In the meantime, the United States has become the first country to approve the respiratory syncytial or syncytial virus RSV in the world. The senior U.S. Food and Drug Administration, Peter Marks, who disclosed this in a statement, said the approval of the first RSV vaccine is an important public health achievement to prevent a disease which can be life-threatening. Reports say the RSV is a common respiratory virus that usually causes mild, cold-like symptoms, stressing that most people recover in a week or two. But RSV can be serious, especially for infants and older adults. Meanwhile, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports that RSV leads to approximately 60,000 to 120,000 hospitalizations and 6,000 to 10,000 deaths among adults 65 years of age and older. And now in sports, Napoli have won their first Serie A title in 33 years as they drew with Udinese at Dacia Arena to spark jubilant celebrations back in Naples, where they last won the league in 1990 with a Diego Armando Maradona-inspired side, adding to their first title 3 years earlier. Victor Osimhen smashed in a 52nd minute equalizer after Sandy Lovric had given Udinese a shock lead. Napoli held on to the points they needed to win their third Serie A title with 5 games to spare. But still in sport, Manchester United's Champions League hopes suffered a setback as Brighton scored a dramatic 99th minute penalty winner to keep their own European ambitions on track. Alexis McAllister converted deep into injury time to settle a Premier League thriller at the Amex Stadium. United, in the fourth and final Champions League qualification spot, stay 4 points ahead of 5th place Liverpool, but now have only 1 game in hand. Meanwhile, Brighton in 6th are now only 4 points adrift of Liverpool. On our entertainment news, Agada, the rising star of contemporary R&B, has released his latest single, Update. Update is the latest addition to Agada's discography, which includes previous hits featuring top artists like Davido, Psycho Wifey, YC, and others. But still on entertainment, Nigerian actress Stephanie Okereke-Linus has returned with a new project following a last full-length feature in 2014. Titled When Women Were Counted, the upcoming title is based on the story of the Aba Women's Riot in 1929, where the project explores the lives of the brave women of that era who organized a massive revolt against the policies imposed by British colonial administrators in southeastern Nigeria. And that's all we have for you at this time. Many thanks indeed for joining us. Don't forget to follow us on all of our socials and do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website. Just search spectrumtv.ng. You've been watching the news at 12. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Raymond Ita. Good afternoon.